I'm here in Wapichan Wiizi with Gavin Winter, who is the monitoring coordinator of the South Rupununi District Council, which is the legally recognized governing body of Wapichan territory in Guyana. So Gavin, first of all, thank you so much for welcoming me to the community today.
Sure. Thank you as well for coming to visit us.
Very, very pleased to be here. I want to start by asking you, what is the monitoring program of the SRDC, which that's the South Rupununi District Council? We'll be calling it the SRDC in this interview.
Yes, sure. Well, SRDC is South Rupununi District Council, of course. From 2005 to 2009, we've been documenting different ways and means of strategy of farming conversation dialogues with the government, as trying to get the government to recognize these lands that we are claiming. Our forefathers have claimed back since before independence, and we have different documents that we've created, right? So we have a management plan that we've came up with in 2009, and in that document it recommended environmental monitoring body, kind of, whereby this program is more like the ears and the eyes of the SRDC. The area is vast and not much is known about out there. So the monitoring program is a way of how we facilitate that, right? So it's an environmental monitoring program whereby we track environmental degradation, kind of, right? So any activity, do it extractive or use of resources, we kind of track those activities around Wapichan territory mainly. So the monitoring program started off in 2013, and up to now we're still going along, still working up to now. So far, so good. Yeah.
Great. And speaking of like environmental degradation, what are some of the main sources or the main problems that you're dealing with degradation?
Oh,
the main causes.
Well, of course, the main or the biggest activity that's happening around here is the mining. Mm-hmm. We don't have much lumbering as yet, but we do track, here and there, whatever lumbering activity is happening, illegal that is.
Right.
And the border between Brazil and Guyana, there's a river there, Takatu, and it's porous with more than a dozen illegal crossings, we would say. So that's part of our routine schedule, kind of checks from now and again.
And so in that case, you'd have people coming over from Brazil to engage in unauthorized extractive, like mining and things of that nature?
Yes, we have people using these crossings, both in the dry and in the rain, right? Mm. But in the dry is more prevalent because people can easily ride over or drive over.
Oh wow! Yeah. Like ATVs and motorcycles. And
vehicles, even, yeah. So these are some of the activities that happen. Well, then you have some rustling happening along those areas as well, and illegal hunting.
Rustling, like stealing
animals,
cows?
Yeah, cattle, and illegal hunting.
Right.
So these are some activities that happen along the border too sometimes. Yeah.
And so let's say in the course of your monitoring activities that you encounter someone who's actually engaged in illegal mining, for example. Right. What's your move at that point?
Well, the main the main purpose of the monitoring is to track or get evidence, right? We go for evidence as to show this is what's happening, because most of the times when our leaders go to meet the government or any other person in authority, they ask for evidence. What are the evidence of these things happening? And taking word and mouth or complaints from people just like that sound like we making up stories sometimes. So the monitors are trained in documenting evidence and making reports for the leaders, and they use those reports to go to make to further whatever complaints we would have had.
Okay, so you guys are formulating reports. You pass them on to SRDC leadership,
Yeah.
and then SRDC leadership interacts with a government agency.
Yes.
Around that.
Yes, that's how basically how we work. So, for example, the border, we would liaison with the army sometimes, or if it's anything to do with crimes, and so we would engage in with the police. If it's mining, it's the GGMC, Guyana Geologian Mines, and then of course Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. These are the main bodies that we've been working with so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, like, in general, like, if you encounter an illegal mining operation, what's like the timing between you preparing your report and then action being taken against the people doing that activity?
Sometimes it would be it would go over a period of time, of course, but then sometimes it's immediate almost. What I could say in terms of response from Geology and Mines, Guyana got Geology and Mines, GGMC, they're more like responding in a more quicker, faster way than before. So once we would have enough evidence of exactly where the location is and this is what's happening, they would respond almost immediately and send down officers and have us going there to check with the officers in the area. Yeah, so like a week, less than a week, 2 weeks is enough time for us to, I think, go back to visit wherever the area is. Yeah.
Okay, wow. And so looking at this monitoring program in general, about how many people are engaged in the monitoring, and then like what do their activities look like on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So ideally, we had proposed that every community have a monitor from each village, right? But that is not realistic, because one is we don't have the amount of activities happening in every village, for example.
Okay.
We don't have mining in every village as yet. So we only have, mainly the mining is more towards the forested villages.
Okay.
And we have monitors along those villages, and we don't have work, like I say, for them on a day-to-day basis, really. But whenever we have a scheduled trip, like which would happen every month, or whenever there's an emergency kind of activity happening, this is when we will take monitors to go check the area or go find what's really happening out there. So monitors are not really employed from day-to-day basis, really. All right, so I'm the only one employed from the monitoring group.
Okay.
And I have to be in the office every day almost, from morning till afternoon, kind of.
And then you'll be in contact with different people who are in the field from the office, or?
Yeah. my work is out there really, right? So I would go with the monitors to coordinate or organize wherever we are going. But in the office there, of course, is following up and contacting different people, and you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, especially with the leaders, the tushos from other villages, you know, trying to get them to following up with reports and things like that. So basically that's what we do normally.
I also want to ask you, like, what's the security situation when you do this work? Because I know there are other countries like where illegal miners, for example, in Brazil and parts of like West Africa, will actually like shoot at people and stuff. So yeah.
Well, for the mining area, of course, definitely the situation among themselves is the problem, right? Where miners themselves have grievances among themselves
Against other miners.
And then if we pop up unannounced, we find ourselves in problem sometimes, right?
Wow.
Yeah, one time we actually were chased by miners with guns and vehicles. Right?
Oh wow.
Yeah. This is like traumatic sometimes, or it can traumatize people sometimes, you know.
Sure.
I mean, big men.
Yeah, and you're running for your life, basically.
Yeah. So we do encounter these things. One time with Gregor from Digital Democracy, we were actually surrounded and circled by miners, whereby we were flying drones over them, and they felt that we were spying on them, or you know, videoing them and things. We were accused of espionage and spying on their women, all kind of nonsense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that kind of thing do happen. They snatched our drone and they chopped it up. They broke up our drone. We had to end up in the police. We had to end up taking the police there to get back our drone, kind of.
Wow.
But lucky we were not harmed. They didn't. Physically hurt. On the border is the same thing, because you have hunters coming from Brazil with, of course, rifles that. We don't carry guns on us when we go there. Not even a bulletproof vest. You know?
Yeah.
Just a little piece of permit from the Tusha or leader saying that we are doing whatever work we're doing. But on the border, security is a problem because ranchers are out there on their own, right? So it's not really safe. You know, there are more than one rancher on the border there who is probably today without animals, because people rustle out their animals.
Oh, and so they will sort of be quick to pull a gun if they see anybody.
Yeah. Cannot defend themselves, right? And they're always carrying these weapons, of course. So the risk is, you know, is pretty much scary sometimes.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, in Brazil, of course, especially during Bolsonaro's presidency, you heard about a lot of violent incidents where land defenders were hurt.
Oh well, I forgot to mention there is an impact with that change in Brazil, right? When Bolsonaro, and now you have another Lula. So if they shut down mining in Brazil, they're now coming. You have a sudden increase of Brazilians right now in the area here in Marudi, right?
Wow.
And they're prospectors, of course, and they're like out there walking for days out in the forest there. With no permission from anybody.
Wow. So because they don't want to face the Brilliant army, so they came over here.
Yeah, that's what's happened. For at least you notice it from this year. I mean, last year, then that you have an increase of people here. As of October, I think last year, there was a,
23.
yeah, there was an enforcement activity happening with the police, immigration, EPA, GGMC, whereby they came to Marodi and shut down everything, shut down all the operations and marched almost everybody who didn't have proper documents in the area, Spanish, whoever who were there, were packed in a truck and taken out from the mining area.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you know they eventually deported them, or you don't know what happened?
Well, we don't know what happened. You know, we just know that they took them out, and you're not sure if they are back there again.
Right.
But most of the times they don't have document. They'd have to leave.
They'd have to go. Yeah. Wow. And I wanted to ask you too about. I think there was, at least early on, some kind of connection between the monitoring group or the SRDC and Digital Democracy.
Right.
Digital Democracy being a nonprofit org that also does land defense related work.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, since 2013 to now, we've had more than one partners working with, right? So in the initial stage, we had Digital Democracy, a guy named Gregor, I forget his surname, but he was the one who really came down and have this monitoring work started really, right? So in terms of using smartphones, putting information or gathering information on smartphones, he created like forms, different forms of how we document the evidence. Then he introduced drones to us.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we started to use drones because the monitors are kind of like mappers as well, right?
Yeah.
So we gather evidence of where people use, how far people live, where they hunt, where they fish, where their ranches are. All of these are information that monitors would use, different mapping tools, and then we take those information and add that information onto our map, our baseline map, really.
Wow.
Yeah. So great assistance from Digital Democracy back then, and we worked like I think 2 years or more even, right? Until we change partners. We keep changing partners. So now we work with U.S. Foundation, U.S. Forget their name. RFUS, Rainforest US.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are, the partners that we would have worked with.
Yeah.
And have good working relationship with them.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So we learn from them, and of course they learn from us as well.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
So the technology is from learning from them. They teach us how to use these information, equipment and things like that.
Yeah. And so are you still doing this kind of digital mapping?
Oh yes.
Technique.
Yes, we are, and the monitoring is cross-cutting across the work of the SRDC, really, right? So there's cultural heritage work going on now, and that is something that we're beginning to map. Where are these sites? And in the near future, we will come up with ways of how do we monitor these areas. So for now, we are like picking up exactly where these sites are, and the communities are formulating cultural heritage policies and making rules for these areas. So as long as we have that completed, then we can know exactly where is the site, and then we will know how to monitor these areas. So all of this is in work in progress, still to happen yet as time goes by.
Yeah, wow, that's great. And then like just curious from like a, I don't know, like a system architecture standpoint or whatever, like these databases, this map, like it's not something that I could just go on the internet and see the map, right?
No.
It's like, because you don't want other people, outsiders, to be able to access it, right?
Well, the outline or the border of the map, I don't think is a problem.
Right, right.
But then the different layers of information on the map is, I think, is not visible for everybody unless you have permission to look at wherever you want to look. The monitoring, again, program do have a data sharing protocol. So, once we follow that, we can share information to whoever want to see those information. I think that's how we operate.
Oh, so you can like reveal, let's say there's like an illegal mining operation happening here.
Yeah.
You can reveal just that piece to...
Yes. Once we know who is requesting that information, we can reveal it, maybe without the GPS pointer, but strictly not to miners especially.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So that's the kind of fear that we have.
So like in a typical year, how many illegal operations does the monitoring group generally come into contact with?
Well, across the forested area, like I mentioned, we have like 4 mining areas. We have one to the east called Silver Creek, and then we have Marudi, which is the more bigger one, and then we have Wakadanao, and then we have Parabara and Monkey Jump areas. So Marudi is the main mining area in the whole of the south here, whereby there's a large scale who is operating there or who have an exploration permit, but there are local Guyanese mining there as well, and that's like a big thing happening out there right now.
So you mean the local Guyanese, they're operating without permission, or they have permission from the concession?
They have permits from the owner right now, right? So.
And who's the owner, or where are they from?
I think it's a Canadian company now operating there, named Gold Strike. Aras. The companies change so often that.
Oh wow! They sell it to each other.
Yeah, so people, it's the local person don't get information as to what's happening, and it's hard for them to track what's happening out there sometimes. So that's why we have to try and be there so we know what's happening in the area there.
Yeah.
So Wakadanao is active throughout the year, but not as big as what's happening in Marudi. All right. So let me say every 3 months we would make a spin around to go check what's happening. So if nothing's happening in Silver Creek, then we don't have to go there. And if nothing's happening in Wakadanao, we don't have to go there. It's mainly Marudi and Monkey Jump, the more distant areas. Well, the distant areas are active because there's sometimes confusion in Marudi, right? So you have the big company, and they're not mining; they're exploring. They have exploration permit, but there's I don't know what kind of agreement they have now whereby they're allowing these local miners to mine on their claim. So that agreement is for 5 years, and there's a local, they try to organize themselves and call them the Rupununi Miners Association. Rupununi meaning supposed to be people from the Rupununi, and they're organizing themselves now and working actually right now, and they're setting up like almost large-scale operations at the moment.
So are they also Wapichan people?
No,
okay.
mainly from Letem. These are mainly Letem people. There's hardly any village people have any machinery out there. So that's the thing that we have to put up with, kind of. So you will find under that, you might find like 40 operations, they would say, is active in Marodi, right? So another 2, another 3 here and there. So you will maybe have like 50 operations operating, you know, at one time.
And some of those, like, you can't do anything about them because it's permitted, kind of?
Yeah. So, you know, anything that we know is have some deals already with, I'm not sure who. We don't really trouble them, but we just check the water is what we would follow.
So you do monitoring to make sure that they're not using like chemicals that they're not supposed to be using and stuff?
Like mercury is one of the things that we kind of track and try to follow. And of course, turbidity of creeks and water is what people would complain about, especially the village that is on Kujiwini. So they fish and more on a daily basis. So they encounter that every time they go, and you know the water is, you can't even fish, you can't even drink the water, right? So that's the kind of thing that we would follow up on, and have GGMC or EPA to go see what's happening out there.
And do you notice in those kinds of situations when it is a licensed basically operation but doing something they're not supposed to be doing, is the follow-up kind of the same, or like when you go back, do you notice the mercury levels being lower, for example?
Well, in terms of mercury, it does something that it's hard to pick up on evidence in terms of how much mercury is being used, really, right? GGMC is authorized to check that out very well, so they can check to see how much is being used over time. But that information is only with them, right? GGMC have that information. We don't have that. We don't have the authority to go, just say, hey, how much did you use for last week and that kind of thing.
So it's at GGMC's discretion if they want to follow up that way?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And then
but we, from our end, from our work that we would like to follow up on that. One is by restarting our water monitoring program, which we kind of stopped for a year or more now. We've not been doing water monitoring in the mining areas over the years, but we are hoping to restart that. And in terms of really finding out if exactly mercury is being leaking out into the creeks, we hope to zero down on that by doing more water testing, doing fish sampling, and doing more human testing for mercury in human levels in human.
Wow.
So all of these are work that we hope to do is the wildlife, especially, out there. For example, Aishalton here, there's my village. There's a creek flowing out of Marudi there, right? And people fish and use fish from there. And there's a special fish that they use, the haimara. It's a big fish. And we don't know how healthy are those fishes in terms of mercury level, right?
And then if you eat it, you can also expose yourself to...
So all of this is something that we are hoping to start doing. It's expensive. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the training, because for everything that we do, monitors will have to go under good training, right? So, for example, GGMC laws, monitors will have to go through training for those. Environmental laws, we have to go training for those. All these are work that we have to follow up on.
Yeah, wow. And I was going to ask, like, so if that was going to come together, where would the financial resources come from to make it work?
Good question. Well, mainly right now we rely on donations from partners outside, NGOs. So
you're not getting money from the Guyanese government?
No, hardly. So that's why I think once we start knowing what we're doing out there, right? And the SRDC can understand that, for example, water testing equipment is expensive. And even if we are to do water sampling, is a big expense in terms of getting the water from the location out into the city to test, right? So this is expensive. So if we somehow could work and get the government to be part of that operation, is something I think worth trying to do in the future. Partnering with them, because EPA does that hydromet test for chemicals in water. So I think it's just a matter of coordinating with them, and maybe they can stand some of the expense for us.
Yeah. And then I finally wanted to ask, I mean, I know that you're not a spokesperson for the SRDC, but if you can tell me, like, and it's fine if you can't, but like, I wonder what the general feeling is within SRDC leadership as to just the existence of these legal exploration permits or legal mining concessions. I mean, is that something that people are happy to see here? Would people rather not, would leadership rather not see those mines in this territory, Wapichan territory at all?
Yeah, I think there's a struggle that we have generally, right? Whereby the first question we ask out there when we go is, did you get permission from a village to mine? And the answer is always no. Because it's political, that we're living in title lands, and out there what are referred to as ancestral lands. So in Guyana, they hardly recognize ancestral lands, kind of. So basically the miners out there know that we don't have jurisdiction over those areas, really.
Under the Guyanese
law, right? But so it's something that we've been struggling with in terms of it backlash in an internal conflict, kind of, whereby there are some people who are against mining totally, and then of course there are the younger ones who will want jobs, who say that mining brings employment and different kind of thing. But that is a work in progress for the SRDC again, right? To actually go out there and interview villagers, and go through a fine check to really find out, are we benefiting from these activities? And until then, I believe that we could still come up with a general decision to say yes or no, right? So it's still something that we've never like answer outright at the moment, right? But for now, we are working along with the agencies in terms of having them to comply with regulations. I mean, they have regulations, of course, very well, but sometimes they're not out there to check to see if they're following these regulations, right? But again, for Marudi, we now have GGMC have an outpost on the road out there, so they're more or less on a daily basis in the mining area, and I think it's something positive, at least for us, right? That we could get them to respond almost immediately if
rather than having to drive out a long distance.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And they have employed villagers from here as rangers with them now, like local people, right? So it's more easier for me to call them up and say, hey, what's going on, or did you check so and so, or if I go there and I find something, you have a more direct relationship with GGMC compared to, let me see, 10 years ago.
Right.
There was totally nothing happening from their end, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, just like speaking very broadly, where would you like to see this monitoring program go in the future? Like, do you see it as being a fully realized thing now, or do you see room for it to grow in other ways?
For me, I would like to see it become more active. The problem with the kind of monitoring that we do is it's reactive, meaning it's only if something happen, then we go, which I'm not sure how we could prevent something from happening. But for the time now that I'm seeing, then we hope to improve our work by using satellite imagery.
Oh wow!
So we have persons trained now in the office there who can use satellite imagery to pick up wherever you have a deforestation happening or whatever happening there. They can pick up that location, and then we will have to go ground truth that to see whatever is happening out there. So that kind of technology that we hope to incorporate into our work, especially the areas where not much people are out there, right? So satellite imagery should be able to pick up these activities. Well, I mentioned the mercury work that we hope to build on, and then as part of our more broad strategy is, of course, to have these areas recognized as, true Wapichan territory. But of course, the government is now want to play that game, so they're going titling and issuing titles and extensions at the moment. So
to villages or to
villages, yeah. So our work is to gather information, like I said before, to justify why these areas are important to you. So in terms of cultural attachment and spiritual attachment, all of these are information that we are gathering over time. But in terms of strategy, we are looking to start documenting and monitoring, for example, biological hotspots. Or we want to use science more than that. For example, if this is an area here, once we find the importance of this area to people, and then we want to take scientists there to go look for, is there any special plant, or is there any special frog or animal that is rare, or that kind of thing. So that's the kind of thinking that we have in the future. So if we find a bird who is rare and he needs this amount of space, we can use some kind of protection for that bird, but at the same time protecting the area as well under like a conservation approach kind of thing.
So you would kind of make the argument that like we're the ones who are best positioned to preserve this ecosystem so that this plant or this animal can continue
Yes.
to live there.
Yeah. So like for example, this place we have petroglyphs here, right?
Yeah.
So fire is another threat that we are facing especially now in the dry. So we have work scheduled to further under fire. We're hoping to again do work on fire, and so then we have monitors out there who specialize in fire. So maybe using satellite imagery too to pick up where, once we identify, for example, this mountain here, we'll have monitors come out there and do fire breaks around. So before the normal user come and set fire, and then you have the entire mountain burning down.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. So all these are work that we hope to do in the near future.
Yeah, and so just forgive my ignorance around the terminology, but when you say fire breaks, is that like clearing brush or controlled burning? Or?
Yes, controlled burning is something that I think have been practiced back in the days, right? Even if you have a farm here, right? You can farm. The thing is, conservationists might feel that, oh, you shouldn't have people in there in whatever area, but we're seeing it as you can farm. It's okay for you to farm as long as you control the fire that you're using, right? So you'll have to clear leaves, clear forest, and make sure the fire don't spread into the jungles by itself. So yeah, definitely fire control is what we because we just can't stop people from burning, right? Fire is part of our culture.
Yeah.
So it will be something difficult to just shut off.
But you need to just make it so that when fires do start, they don't go out of control.
Yeah. So education and awareness of these things is something that we will have to start with, where we go into communities and raise that awareness, and eventually they will say, oh yes, indeed, this is what's happening and this is what you need to do. So most of this work here is directed from communities, from villages themselves, right? So we don't go telling people, oh, we do this, we need to do that. They direct us to say, oh, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
Or
so
this is the area we need to,
you say this is the problem, and they're like, this is how we're going to solve
how
it.
we, yeah. Yeah. So, and we have SRDC general meetings happening like 3-4 times for the year. And this is where we come and we report, and they give that steering in those meetings, really. Decisions are made at that meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Every 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah, so like 3 times a year.
Yeah, 3 times a year. So it would be a team from each village community bringing out the Tushao, counselor, elder, or youth, because the SRDC is made up of that, right? So there's a youth arm of the SRDC. So over the years, we've been like neglecting the young people, right? So I mean, and we've decided that we can't leave them out. So they're part of now our strategic plan, right? So every activity that we have, we make sure that we have women and youth joining in that congregation all the time.
Wow.
So you have a representation from every community, and then when they gather, it's a huge meeting. Sometimes 3 days, lasts like 3 days, sometimes 4 days, depending on the agenda or work that we have.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest, I think, gatherings that we would have from time to time.
Yeah. Well, Gavin Winter, thank you so much for taking the time to teach me about what you do and about the monitoring group's work. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you too for coming, and hope to see you again in some time.
Yeah, I really hope to come back. Definitely.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Cool, man.
Anything.
Cool.